activists, and policymakers gathered in Beijing for the Fourth World Conference on Women. The recent report is still regarded as the most ambitious global blueprint for gender equality. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action of 1995. The Platform for Action outlined 12 critical areas of concern, including women and poverty, education and training of women, women and health, violence against women, women and armed conflict, women and the economy, women in power and decision-making, institutional mechanisms for advancement of women, human rights of women, women and the media, women and environment, and of course the girl child. Nigeria was part of that historic moment, pledging to remove barriers that prevent women from enjoying full and equal rights in political participation, education, health, economic opportunities, and protection from violence. The International Labour Organization, to mark the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration in March this year, highlighted that while progress has been made, it has been uneven and insufficient, with global gender employment gaps narrowing by only 4 percentage points in 3 decades. Women remain underrepresented in employment, and of course overrepresented in informal work, and face persistent pay gaps. In Nigeria, 30 years later, where do our women stand? Have we made progress, or are the promises still unfulfilled? And what must be done to secure the dignity, voice, and empowerment of women in years ahead? To guide us through this conversation, we have been joined by one of Africa's foremost advocates for women's rights, Professor Ngozi Ezeilo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, OON, Life Venture, founder of WACOL, Tamar SARC, and former Dean of Law at the University of Nigeria, of course, the new campus of the University of Nigeria. With over 30 years of professional experience, Prof. specializes in international law, gender and sexual reproductive rights. Between 2008 to 2014, she served as the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. In 2022, BBC listed her among 100 women of impact in the world. She is a high chief in Igbo land. In fact, some people say she's a triple chief. She's popularly known in some quarters as Ochendo. But most importantly, she is known as Adeje Jembandiwo. Prof, Chief, San, Life Venture.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Cyril Anyoke. It's a pleasure indeed to be at the Freedom Square Television and to discuss this very vital issue, especially as the world marks 30th anniversary of Beijing Conference.
Thank you. Before we go into the nitty-gritty of the 30 years of Beijing, last week, just the past 1 week or thereabout, witnessed a carnival of sorts.
True.
We witnessed what many call or describe as the largest gathering of lawyers anywhere in Africa.
True, true.
And you were a very part of it.
Yes.
What have been your takeaway?
Oh, a lot. Because like you rightly said, the Nigerian Bar Association is the largest bar in Africa. And then even in the world, if after India and China, maybe we just will rank, within 5th. So we are really, and for Enugu to host it, even by providence, became really very good for us, especially for us that are Enugu residents, coast city people that were born and bred here. For me, it was really, looking at the team, saying standing out, standing tall. But again, the context of justice ecosystem, stand tall for justice sector reform, for good governance, for rule of law in particular, and then solidarity that is important. So if you look at the conference, look at the issues that were discussed, you find that it was very inclusive of old, young new wigs, inclusive of people from other profession coming to also interact and give us talk, because it's not just about lawyers. Others need to know and also have their take about rule of law. And then again, when you look at the major takeaways, for example, the commitment of Nigerian Bar Association to play a role in providing pro bono to the poor and the vulnerable, and the establishment of pro bono fund, which they've committed money by NBA, is unprecedented. And we are quite happy. And for a number of partners that came, it was also a time for them to recommit. UNICEF played a role. WACOL, we had a session that we discussed also issues of status of women and the Beijing, especially the special seat. And then we had people, the Deputy High Commissioner, Gileva, we had the UN Women, we have UNESCO Director, we have the Director of the African Center for Human Rights from Pretoria, South Africa. We have Aisha Yesufu, the activist. And it was really well, and WACOL principal legal officers providing pro bono legal aid. So it just re-emphasized or reaffirmed the need for lawyers to assume the role they're supposed to assume in society. They are the ones to wield accountability stake. They are the ones to raise the bar when you talk about rule of law. They are the ones to lead for others to follow. And if we start faltering, and if things start going wrong with lawyers, then you know that society is in trouble. And that's the whole essence of it. So the access to justice component is important, so that we look at every aspect of it. All the administrators of justice, the security sector, and they really participated. You have people from the police, from DSS, from immigration, from correctional facilities, and then, like I said, it was an interface, so that if we talk about commercialization of the police, we get people to tell us what's really the problem here, and we've got the police representing IGP to say, look, if anybody asks you for this, ask for receipt. But these are not laughing matter. It just means that it's opportunity for us to address pressing societal problems. And in addressing those pressing societal problems, the way it matters for all. Like when it came to access to justice panel, there was a panel, they really did it, security. Actually, citizens' rights and security issue. There was no woman on the panel. And of course, I picked it up. I said, we cannot have this panel. We cannot talk about security and fundamental rights without women and children that bears the brunt. It is so imperative that we bring them. They are really, they bear the brunt of gender-based violence, and they need to participate fully. And their concerns, especially in this era of Jennifer Law experience, Comfort Emerson, the BRT bus person that was killed, the woman who was, murdered in a church during the COVID time. You see, there is spike in gender-based violence. And then the insecurity in the country is also making women more vulnerable, because we're having fewer and fewer safer spaces, fewer and fewer safer cities, for women and other people who are vulnerable to walk freely on the street. And these are issues of concern in terms of their ability to enjoy their fundamental human rights. Right to movement, right to security of person, right to bodily integrity, right to freedom from torture, degrading, inhuman treatment, and punishment. All of these are fundamental rights. And right to freedom from discrimination, right to be recognized as a human being, right to life that should not be abrogated under any circumstance, except through lawful means and through court for someone who is tried and convicted. Even suspected suspects have rights, and their right must be respected. I stand for justice for all, and that I think what is important, and I believe that's also what NBA stands for. And as for Enugu hosting, excellent job, and we commend the governor of Enugu State, we commend their team, we commend the facilities. In fact, for many lawyers, as they are leaving, they are all saying this is really a memory, a lasting memory and impression about Enugu and the coast city in particular. Because we have, for the first time, like you have a conference, Enugu has this ambience and this thing that by probably designed from our, forefathers and mothers, we have not just this 3-arm zone, but also additional of kind of recreational ambience that comes with the other square. Then you have the ICC. Then you have to the other side the House of Assembly, Parliament. Then you have Government House. Then you have Judiciary, and all of those zones. You know, it has this open place, ability to really enjoy that. And I'm so glad it will remain the way it is now. Nothing will ever change again. It's forward ever and backward never. We're happy that that space has been reclaimed, and I can see even NBA coming now within next 4 years back again. I can see that, because you need a place with facilities. And once you can see, I'm telling you, if you go to the money market, it became a favorite spot for lawyers to hang out. Hang out till late.
I was going to ask you, beyond the glamour of the law and the conferences and seminars, what the money market?
The Mami Market was good, and of course, you know, they have the boogie night. But the Mami, I'm telling you, my classmates, almost every group were meeting. There was a lot, and people came home. People came from all over. I ate the best roasted plantain, and I was looking for the woman, looking for the number, only to be told that she came from Port Harcourt. Anyway, I found the number. So I said, so you just came from Port Harcourt to roast plantain for us. So it's really an open market. So people came from all over. And then the Enugu people have also the delicacies and the special, and we ate and enjoyed all those special. The palm wine, you know, assorted, and the original stuff. We tell them, please don't bring anything that will give anybody any running stomach, and they lived up to it. You know?
You know, we had there were the book sessions in the Mami Market.
Yeah.
We started there, and but for me, what was interesting is that I got to have amala and the wedu soup.
Wow, you know, I mean,
prepared
diversity.
Prepared by a woman who came all the way from Ibadan.
That's what I'm telling you. It's really interesting. We must continue to encourage this, because in MBA, honestly, I see what we need and what we miss out from Nigeria, where people try to crucify these ethnic groups or demonize. In MBA, the unity becomes clear. You know, even our election can be seamless. You know, leadership, the accountability. You can see our AGM continue till evening. On the day of the annual general meeting, everybody and every officer gave account. We had our account, we have the treasurer. They will tell you how they are using our money, you know, and this is what we need. They will talk to the people and they answered the question, and they debated constitutional amendment, and it just went on for hours. So really, we want a Nigeria where we take the best from each ethnic group, so that in that diversity, we will find the strength, we'll find political strength. It will be a resource that will bring greater happiness for everyone. Can't you see, you eat amala, you're happy. I ate plantain from specially made from Port Harcourt their own way. And I was very happy.
Okay, Prof, let's just get to the heart of our business today.
Yeah.
And that is the 30 years of Beijing. What memories?
A lot, because when you think that it was the world's largest gathering of women with about 6,000 delegates, with 189 countries being represented, with 4,000 media persons, can you imagine? 4,000 media, 4,000 civil society. It was really, you know, it was, and the world leaders were determined and for the first time recommitted to women's, to emphasizing that women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. It was also the time of Bill Clinton as the president of America. So the wife was very, made this powerful statement about women's rights being human rights. It was a very big convening that built on the previous 3 conferences from Copenhagen, you know, from Mexico to Copenhagen City, Copenhagen in Denmark to Nairobi. Nairobi was in 1985 mid-review, and after Nairobi, then we had the Beijing. And interestingly, there has not been any world conference since Beijing. So that's why there have not been any conference. It was the 4th world conference, and so far the last. But now what kind of is decided is that why not build on the declaration, because one of the most important outcomes of that conference was adoption by, you know, the real delegates at government, 189 countries, adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. So when we talk about Beijing plus 30, this is the plan of action we use to assess, to do stock taking, to say how far thus far And that's what I'm glad that you were able to give overview of it. You can see it covers issues around women and poverty, education and training, violence against women, women and women's health, women and economy, the girl child, institutional mechanism, women and armed conflict, women and environment, you know, all of these very important issues, women and decision making, women power and decision making. And these are, you know, when I look at it, I say, what a masterstroke to have identified these 12 critical areas of concern that continue to be relevant, that continue to be material, that continue to be that benchmark for assessing how well we are doing with regard to implementation of that Beijing Declaration and platform of action. So they are still, but unfortunately, on the other hand, it can also be depressing when you look at those issues and to think that the world is still grappling with it. Which one are we not grappling with? Poverty still wears a woman's face. Issue of education and training, yes, gains has been made. There has been also dropout of school. Things are becoming expensive for people to aspire to tertiary education. Is it an economy? On the economy, women still play a role in the informal sector. They are yet to be mainstreamed. Politically, we know how it is in the world. And then we can come back to Nigeria to look at this specific, because women's health continue to be a concern. Women maternal mortality, Nigeria is also still one of the highest. So most of these issues, environmental issues, the worst is that climate change has been added to it. Violence against women and poverty still remain the most surreptitious form of violation of human rights of women. And it's not declining, unfortunately. Yes, we've made progress, but we are not where we want to be.
We are not where we want to be. Despite legal frameworks like the VAP Act, the cost of gender-based violence remain high.
Yeah.
Why is enforcement such a challenge?
I think enforcement is the biggest challenge, because really, I tell people that I'm a lawyer, I'm a law professor. If you look at the law, the extant laws, is adequate. Even if maybe a specific issues might not be explicitly spelled out. But you find that in law, I give example, even if it's sexual harassment, but you find that even criminal code can deal with it. Existing penal laws on assault can deal with it. So, and then of course we have even National Industrial Act that have also provision covering that. But the problem is implementation. Nigeria has ratified a number of international and regional documents, from convention, United Nations Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Of course, the status of the girl child, you know, is a pointer to the status of a woman. So children in that context, girl children. You look at the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the protocol to the African Charter on the rights of women in Africa. And these set standards, abundant standard, elimination of violence, convention against torture, convention against forced disappearances, convention on women's political rights, trafficking, UN trafficking convention to suppress, protocol to suppress, prevent, and punish trafficking in persons. So we have the laws. These standards are no longer not a problem. And even nationally, even though there are, you know, little gaps and here and there, and some major ones, even in the Constitution, but the fundamental human rights in the Constitution equally apply to women. So but the challenge is, how do we enforce it, especially if the violations are taking place in private spaces, in homes, at domestic level. It's not necessarily perpetrated by government, but the government has overall obligation to ensure that everyone is protected in both public and private spheres. You know, and even in the public spheres, we still have issues. Sexual harassment, workplace, sexual harassment, you know, of students. And when you talk of environment, women are closest to environment. They are the ones that manage solid waste. They are the ones that cook, they firewood. They, even that these days, kerosene is so out of reach. And we are saying that they shouldn't fetch firewood because of deforestation, because of ecological implications, including erosion. But still, they have to fetch the firewood. But it's not just about fetching firewood, but the dangers women are exposed to in the course of fetching firewood. If I tell you the number of documented cases where women were raped trying to fetch firewood, or trying to fetch water, going long distance. So these things are fact. So that is part of when you talk of safer cities, even sanitation within the schools, primary schools or secondary school. In one case, the Bisola, and then in that case, the Supreme Court said, had the school provided sanitary facility, it happened in Oyo, that this girl would not have had gone to answer the call of a nature in a nearby bush in the school where she was raped, at 13-year-old. So you see how women are exposed to all kinds of risks because of what is happening. With climate change now, it's even worse because people are displaced. With the conflict and insurgency we have, women and armed conflict, you find that more and more are exposed to risk. And it's not only in Nigeria. I am one of the 3 UN experts that we appointed in 2023 to look at the ongoing war in Sudan. So we are documenting, I am part of independent international fact-finding mission on Sudan and documenting violations of international humanitarian law, laws of war, and human rights, looking at the root causes of the conflict, identifying perpetrators, dealing with the issue of victims, for the purposes of, collaboration with the ICC, International Criminal Court in Rome. And so you see impunity galore. The body of women is a site, war site. Women, rape has become an instrument of war. Normalized in any little insurgency, even Nigeria that's not in open war, like Sudan. What happens in IDP camps has been documented even by UN experts within Nigeria. And these are unacceptable. Is it not in Nigeria that Chibok girls since 2013 are still missing? The Dapchi girls, what's this what's her name, from the Yobe one, the Dapchi school incident, is still missing till date. So when are we going to find these girls? And what is their crime? Is their crime being born a woman? Or is their crime being born a Nigerian? That somebody will go to school, be in the boarding school, and then is kidnapped from there until date. We are talking about them. There are people missing from Bethel Baptist School in Kaduna. There are so many missing children from school in the north and the northwest that are yet to be found, and in other places that are victims of violence against women and girls. So we can go on and on. Every sphere we've been found wanting.
Let's talk about the struggle of Nigerian women, political representation.
Yeah, this is
what are the barriers that keep women out of leadership, and how can this be dismantled?
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers, and I think the barriers that keep women out of leadership is also, lack of is cultural, is stereotypes, is conceptualized dichotomy of the public and the private sphere, the other room politics, and the idea that women belong to the other room, the idea or the concept that women are merely to perform reproductive roles and not productive roles. Women are to be seen. It has also is deep-rooted or ingrained in culture. In cultures and sayings like women are to be seen, not heard, and cultures that believe that women shouldn't feature in the public sphere. So it is a very big problem, because right from Beijing, one of the important markers was recognition. Beijing said provide at least 30%, at least. He didn't ask for too much. He said at least 30% reserved for women for power decision making in public spheres. How far have we fared? If you look, you find that Nigeria performance in terms of gender equality remains relatively low, particularly within sub-Saharan Africa. We rank 29 in the assessment that was done. We are actually in the World Economic Forum gender index mapping. We are 125th place out of 146 countries. That is terribly bad. And if you see the countries that we are their neighbors in ranking, you will see Afghanistan. It's not funny. You will see Yemen. You will see Pakistan. You will see so these countries are we shouldn't be in their league, because we are not, what is happening there is not exactly happening in Nigeria. So why should we be in that league? So we rank 29 behind Namibia, which was ranking high, behind South Africa, behind Mozambique, behind Rwanda, and Burundi, which occupy the first 5 spots for gender parity in Africa. So in Africa, you have number one, Rwanda, followed by Burundi, followed by Mozambique, followed by South Africa, and then followed by Namibia. So Nigeria is a giant of Africa. How big? What a giant. If you're lagging behind every other person. And at times, other countries, they shudder. We see women from Tanzania, they say, we're surprised about your poultry representation this month. That do you say you have only less than 5% of women elected into parliament? And then we'll be struggling to answer. Only 4 women in the Senate, about is it 15 or 16 in the parliament, so under 20. What does that mean when you're talking of 360 in the House of Reps and 109 senators? So you find it's less than, it's actually 3-point-something%. Just call it 4%.
That's quite low.
Yeah, it's very low. It's very, very low.
Okay, let's just leave policy. How does the economic inequality, access to credit, land, and resources affect women's empowerment?
The access to the economic, you mean?
Yes.
The economic inequality is huge, including issue of women lack of access to credit, land, and resources. It affects women's empowerment greatly because, you know, I told you that women operate a lot in the informal sector. If you take even any plane in the West African sub-region before Nigeria really go, you see how women carry plastically clothes they sell, textiles, you know, in the plane and, you know, doing all of those things. But when it comes to the big economy, you find that they are not there. And even the important work they do, because importantly, we need to understand that maternity is a social function. And we need to understand that for the economists, they shouldn't be blind to care work that women provide. They shouldn't be blind to the quantification of housework. You know, the sex division of labor that tend to keep women, you know, at housework. They shouldn't be blind to those things. They should recognize that women are really doing what is important to keep society going, and therefore should be encouraged. So where the power is, women are not. Where the money is, women are not. Land is an instrument of, talk about land is a capital. And access to capital is very important. And they look at how disinheritance, women are disinherited from that. And if you go to even assessing loans, because if you are not economically empowered, how do you run for even office? Yeah. You know, so women need a lot of decent work. There is when you look at public service, yes, they are in the lower ranking ladder of it. There are fewer women in the boardrooms, even though we are beginning to see some major changes in the corporate sector, especially in the bank, you know, with the number of women leading in Nigeria. But when you think of percentage, it's still low. We still want something more than that, and something better that will put women in a position that they can have sustainable livelihood, in a position that they can have access to basic facilities. When you have a decent work, you're able to provide housing for yourself or pay for one. You're able to have proper dressing. You're able to have access to water, sanitation, and all of those things. This is what we need. Because without economic, people ask women, why can't you opt out of a very abusive relationship? And you see that they cannot, because they lack the economic means. You know how many women we have had to pay their dowry? And normally we don't even pay the full thing, that people go and write a long list. You know, now the long list in Igbo land, especially Imo State now, is legendary. So back then, some people, when there is a bad marriage, after even the woman has given birth, why should the woman even return the bride price or the dowry? Will you put her in the same condition she was even at the beginning? So now they will write a list. We just ignore the list. We'll go back to the dowry limitation laws of Eastern Nigeria. It limits dowry to 50 pounds. You go and drop the equivalent, 50 naira, not even up to 55,000 naira. How did you do the conversion? To the customer court. we do the conversion as it then was. As it then were. We cannot do it for the current conversion. But even on a serious note, even if you do it for the current conversion, how much does it come to? It's still nothing. Yes. You know, so it's still better than somebody writing a list. You have to return a goat, return a cow, return 20 wrappers. Who will pay that? And that's why they remain there, because and that way they will lay claim to the, even if the person have another children from other man, it will still be attributed to the person because you have not refunded bride price. And mind you, death does not nullify return of bride price. So that is the funny one. Yes. Because if the person, even the person marrying, they said because marriage in Igbo land, for example, is between two families. So even if the husband had died and the woman wants to remarry, you still have to return bride price. Can you imagine?
Okay, Prof, we'll just take a short break. When we come back, we're going to look at culture and religion.
Okay.
And as obstacles to gender equality.
Thank you.
Let's play some lyrics. We'll be back shortly. What are you going to change it?
Yeah. How long is it, right?
Maybe 3 minutes or so.
I drink water, my lipstick will touch
Okay.
it. Maybe my own bottled water. Where is it? It's in the bag. Yeah. It doesn't matter if I want to go see the lipstick.
Okay.